Hi, everybody, and welcome to yet another exciting episode of the Alchemy Lab with me, Colm Holland. I'm the author of The Secret of the Alchemist. If you haven't read it yet, you can find it on Amazon, The Secret of the Alchemist by Colm Holland. And today, the Alchemy Lab, which is this metaphorical lab that we're sitting in, is going to be the environment for two of our amazing guests today. We get two for the price of one here, guys, which is awesome. I'm not going to give you their names at the moment, but I want to tell you something about them before I introduce them. They are the first couple that we've had on in the Alchemy Lab who are actually talking about interpersonal relationships. We have spent, as you know, if you go back through my podcast, you'll see we've had a lot of guests talking about the relationship that we have with ourselves and our journey to try and find our true self and that inner empowerment through alchemy, through personal transformation, which has been fantastic. But today, I felt it was really important that we extend that to look at where our interrelationship, particularly in the context of committed relationships or romantic relationships or marriage or partnerships, lifelong partnerships, how these, the interplay between our personal relationship with ourselves and the interplay with our personal relationships in that context are so interdependent. And we have this amazing opportunity to welcome today Jachym and Tasha. Welcome, guys. It's wonderful to see you. And your surname is Jerry. Am I pronouncing that correctly?
I never told you it's Yerie.
Yerie, you didn't? Okay.
Yeah.
That's great. And at least we got it from you now. Well, welcome to the Alchemy Lab, both of you. It's just a real thrill to have you here. And one of the things that you're well known for, excuse me, is, excuse me, I'm going to pause that. So one of the things that you're really well known for is helping couples transform their relationships. And today we're going to be talking a little bit about the key transforming moments and inspirational insights that have meant so much to you in your life and how you've been able to share that with couples around the world. So welcome, Jachym and Tasha.
Oh, thank you so much.
You're very welcome. Thank you so much for taking
the time. Having us.
My pleasure entirely. I'm going to quote something from your website. You say that in your work, to quote, "We're not here to help people make temporary changes, but to make long-term shifts that will save a relationship. An exceptional relationship takes a continuous engagement. And even when we don't feel like it, we still show up for each other." I love that. That's I don't think I've ever heard it put so eloquently as that. You have a website called yourexceptionalrelationship.com. You'll see that in the comments below. There'll be a link there, and especially yourexceptionalrelationship.com/understand, which you said is a really good place for people to start if they're beginning to look at their relationship and how they can transform it. So what would you like us to think about when we are thinking about what should a romantic relationship look like? What should a long-term partnership look like to be successful, which is what we all want. None of us go into a long-term relationship expecting it to fail. We all genuinely usually want it to work. So what do you reckon? What do we need to know, guys?
Well, that's a really good question. And the way I see it is that there's no answer for it in terms of having a template. And the reason why that is because one of the things that we are really passionate about and that's important to us is that you find what's true for you. Because what happens to many people is that they get stuck in some kind of ideology about how a relationship should be like. So for example, you can talk about gender equality and suddenly you are pigeonholed into a certain way of being or not allowed to be in a certain way in a relationship. And it's the same thing with traditional gender roles. It goes either way. It doesn't matter where it goes. As soon as there's an ideology and we have to live up to a certain way of being in the relationship, we are in a way betraying ourselves. And so for it to be a successful relationship, the core of it is to be honest with yourself and find your way with your partner. Because when you're coming together as a couple, you have the opportunity to create something amazing, a little microcosmos, which is really synergetic, where you both empower each other, but that is your way. It's not your partner's way or your own way. It is the way of the couple, you see. And that is really where the power lies, is in that synergy. And to find that synergy, you have to let go of any kind of ideas of how things should be or what you should be doing.
Have you guys got any examples of that from your own life? Is that something you've had to work with and overcome?
Yeah, definitely. Especially the part that Jachym already mentioned about knowing yourself or understanding yourself. So when we first met, we were such different people. And back then I could talk a lot. I was this like hyperactive bunny that just couldn't stop and interacting and jumping up and down. But if you look behind the communication, it looked like I was great at communicating. I had lots of words, lots to say, never quiet. But if you actually look at what I was sharing and what was happening, that's not successful communication when you just talk a lot or say a lot. What matters the most is that you actually, get the point across of your own truth. So we stumbled a lot because at the beginning, I didn't know how to connect to myself. I didn't know myself.
Okay.
And if something in our relationship bothered me, I couldn't understand it. And I wasn't even willing to go there and find out what was going on. I just thought, well, it's a little thing, doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. Or it's like, oh, it's okay. It can't be perfect always. So I just stuff all these doubts and concerns down when something did emotionally bother me, or if I actually needed to voice something and set some boundaries, I couldn't, because I didn't even know what it was that I needed. So because of that, because I didn't know myself, I couldn't share that. I couldn't speak that. I could not communicate that. And that, no matter how many great communication skills and tools and sentences and statements you use, it gets nowhere because you're not even speaking your truth.
Right. So we're assuming, I'm sensing here, that our audience is made up of people who are either already in a committed relationship long term or are trying to work with a committed relationship. But let's not assume that just for a moment. I'm going to be a bit naughty here. So boy meets girl, boy meets boy, girl meets girl, whatever, and romantic love takes place. Okay, that is quite common, probably for 90% of long-term committed relationships. That's the starting point. Do you want to just walk us through what's going on in the human psyche at that moment, and what can we expect if we are going to sort of transform from that initial romantic attraction to what actually, I'll confess here now, my wife and I have been married for 48 years. We've got 2 years left to make it to 50, and then we can retire. No. So hopefully we're going to carry on. But I can remember some, in the distant past, some of what it meant to transform from romantic to committed. So can you just comment on that?
Yeah.
Because a lot of people get stuck in romantic and don't really get much further, in my experience.
Oh, yes. So you start off in the honeymoon. And I mean, biologically, we are wired that in the honeymoon, we are on a high, they are all the hormones raging and you are in love and all of that. And, it is by design. Nature designed us that we procreate as quickly as possible. And so our brain, to a certain degree, gets hijacked by that. And eventually that wears off, right? That kind of nature-driven high. And you start coming down. And then what happens is that you go through an adjustment period where you start looking at your partner and some of those, nice habits that you thought they had become annoying, and you start finding fault in them. You know, you saw them before as this perfect thing, and suddenly it's like, you know, why is she doing this, or why is he doing that? Like, why are we? This is my way's better. You know, and you start to have more of those kind of conflicts, and you can, to a degree, call a certain like a power struggle, that, you know, my way or her way,
Yeah.
and finding our way with that. Like, what are we going to do? And this is, in my opinion, where actually a lot of people really get stuck, is in this kind of power struggle, and constantly having to negotiate. You know, how are you going to do things? And if you're not making it through that, you're either going to stay with it, or what happens is that you start living parallel lives, right? That you are together, but you're not really growing together anymore. You're sharing a household, but that's about it. And we hope that people can go beyond that, because when you actually make it through that, when you actually transition away from the power struggle, what happens is that the love becomes much more conscious, and it becomes a conscious decision to stay with this person. And the depth and the richness that you can then discover in this new phase is much deeper, actually, and better and richer than the honeymoon, in our opinion. And that is really where the relationship gold, you can almost say, is there. It's like a treasure, where you can go deeper and deeper into it as you're growing together. But you got to go through those stages first. You got to go through some of the difficulty before you can actually get together and really build this synergetic couple.
Yeah. In my book, The Secret of the Alchemist, I talk a lot about unconditional love. And in my experience, one of the greatest test beds, if you pardon the pun, for exercising unconditional love intimately for another human being is in a committed relationship. So in your understanding of what it is we have to offer each other, there were some key phrases that you used there. I just would love you to elaborate a bit more on those. One is the word grow together and growth. So there is a whole concept there in your mind about committed relationships, which is this is not a static thing. This is not something that just, you know, wham, two people come together, that's it, this is what it looks like, and this is how it's going to be forever. And they just need, so it's not about preserving that initial attraction, it's about growing, is what I'm hearing you say. So in your mind then, how does the whole concept of unconditional love play out in that growth process? Do we have to continuously allow for each other's difference and to learn to love that? Is that part of the equation that you invite people to look at?
Yeah, absolutely. Because at some point, like Jachym mentioned, there's this power struggle. But what's really going on is that you begin to notice such great differences between you and your partner, and you don't know what to do with that gap. You see it as this big gap. Maybe at the beginning, it was so attractive because they had different worldviews and you were sharing stories, and it was so exciting and fun to learn about someone else's world. But once you move in together and you're really committed in this relationship and your life is shared more and more and more, you begin to realize, wait a second, I don't agree with his or her way. So then where do you go from there? And a lot of times people think at this point that they really gotta compromise now. Like we have to agree to disagree in order for us to not have conflict anymore. So what ends up happening is that people choose to, bring their two differences into the conversation. They somehow come to some sort of agreement, so that next time if it comes up, they have this agreement of, oh yeah, next time when you come home, make sure to put the dishes away, or whatever it might be. But it's a compromise between the two, and so they think they found the solution and they walk away. But the next time the same situation happens again, this is what goes on internally. They do what they agreed to because of that conversation, but inside they're screaming, my way is better. I hate this. I hate this. Why are we doing this? I still like it my way, right? So they've met somewhere in between, but they didn't actually do the synergetic thing of actually finding a solution together. They compromised by meeting halfway, but in a sense, they've actually lost their own two halves. They've stepped back, maybe got their boundaries crossed a little bit. So another example is when something really hurtful happens, some trust is broken. If you find a compromise between that would actually, the solution of a compromise would sound something like, okay, you didn't like that because it was so hurtful, then how about I'll hurt you a little bit next time? That's okay, right? It's halfway. So that doesn't make any sense. Why would anyone agree to that? But so many people think that they have to lose themselves. They have to compromise somewhere in between, that it requires this sacrifice. But what we're saying is that when you truly love someone, you have to open up to their world. You have to be open to sharing your worlds together. You have to open to maybe being wrong or learning something from your partner. You're not here to love this mirror image of yourself. It's not about that. It's about meeting your partner where they are right now and then finding a solution together that's actually creative, while compromising actually brings the whole topic, simplifies it to such a level that you walk away more depleted and more unhappy than before.
Right, and that presumably in your experience and lots of people's experience can lead to a relationship breakdown and a divorce or whatever. This is fascinating. So guys, one of the things that I've read a lot about in terms of interpersonal relationships is this tendency that we have to project our own need, our own void, if you like. So we quite often come into a relationship looking and hoping that our partner is going to meet that need in us. Do you want to comment on that as well? I know that's part of what you teach and what you advise on.
Oh, yes. I mean, this is a huge, huge topic.
Okay.
And to make it very practical, let's bring in a personal example. I lost my dad when I was 6 years old. He committed suicide. And so that, for me, made an imprint on how I am relating and my association to love, right?
Yes.
And so when I met Natasha, we had this push and pull dynamic that was happening unconsciously, where I want her close, but not too close, because love is dangerous in my mind, right?
It can be lost.
And so,
yes.
Yeah, and so that is a prime example of projection, or just a void wanting to be filled, and it at the same time being dangerous. You don't want to go there really, and that's why it's so vital and important that you take responsibility and ownership of your own internal world, that you open up to yourself, that you look at what's happening within you, what are the things, your hang-ups, what are the things that are difficult for you, and not to hide them, not to use the relationship to cushion them, because that is what a lot of times happen. And the relationship is actually a perfect mirror, or a perfect tool, in quotes, a tool to uncover those spots. Why am I getting so angry? Why am I getting so irritated about dishes or a sponge or whatever? What's really going on there? And that is when you allow yourself to then go deeper into that, that is when you can really uncover more about yourself and how you're relating, and heal, and really heal and be seen and show yourself without guarding yourself. And so that, I do see that there is a certain amount of wholeness you want to bring into the relationship that makes the relationship amazing.
Is that one of the things that actually a constructive long-term relationship can offer each other, each partner, is that helping the other to commit to that self-love, that self-healing, to that inner looking? Because in my experience, certainly in the very early days of my marriage, I was definitely conscious that there were so many reactions that were taking place within me that I wasn't even aware of. In my book, I talk about the dragon within, and quite often there would be a trigger that would just come out of the blue, and the dragon would raise its head and breathe its fire and try and destroy everything in its path. And it's always the lack of love. It's always the lack of knowing love in the deepest parts of oneself, and so on. So yeah, I totally agree. Looking at my own processes, that those owning my own shadow, owning my own needs, and my partner's, my wife's commitment as well to holding me to that, and helping me to find solutions there, and vice versa, has definitely meant that we've actually had 48 quite good years together. That commitment to grow. I'm going to ask you something really personal now. Although Jachym, you've kind of already talked about your own. So Natasha, maybe if I dare to throw this open to you, is there been one personal moment of transformation, an encounter with unconditional love that has helped shape and form your ability to give love in your relationship, in your marriage?
There were many moments, but I think this is a really interesting, I guess, example I will share, because you're asking for pivotal moment where I actually felt unconditional love, like experienced it,
Yes.
saw it for myself. And this is interesting because I want to share a moment where we both actually acknowledged how deeply we hurt one another. It was one of the rawest moments within our whole relationship. It was after both of us had a week long, pretty much like a retreat, a detox week with a healer who really, we worked through our marriage, like on our own. But on that last day, we came together and talked about what we learned, and we really shared how we felt. And a lot of that sharing was actually apologizing for the hurtful things we've done to each other, how we feel about it. Because when you hurt someone you love, actually it really hurts you when you hurt someone else. So it's both ends, right? So it was such a tough conversation where we really took responsibility. We really admitted the things we've done wrong, and saying, I see it now, or I feel it now. Like, I know now I screwed up, and I know now what I've done to you, and how I've hurt you. So it was one of those conversations. And of course, the facilitator was in the room in case we needed her and things like that. So it was this moment where we were both crying, and we were both like, oh my goodness, how deeply can you hurt the one you love? And we saw that. We saw just how badly a relationship can turn into, even when it started off with love. And we felt like there was love the whole time. There was love, That's what kept it together even. Yet all that happened. So I think in that moment, I learned that no matter how deeply you've been hurt or how deeply you feel like trust has been broken, you can still choose love again. And for me, that is absolutely unconditional love. That means you can learn from an experience. Human beings, no matter how much they've been hurt, they can forgive. They can choose to go on a path that doesn't represent the past. And you can choose a future together if you want to go in a much better direction, to actually pivot towards something that you want. So that moment really showed me the power of love and the power of unconditional love, where you don't hold the past against your partner, and you don't hold the past against yourself. You forgive you and your partner, and you say, actually, there's so much love here, we can try again. And I think there's so much love here that we could make it happen this time. And it's weird because it's like you're asking me of the brightest light ever of this unconditional love. Yeah, I'm bringing you like the darkest darkness. But I think that contrast shows you how strong love can be.
That's amazing, Natasha. That's one of the most wonderful descriptions I've ever heard, actually, about how that process can work. So could you say that moment in a way was a miracle? Is that a manifestation of something miraculous? When we think about our relationship to the universe and our relationship to love and our relationship to other human beings, there is always that potential, I believe, in each of us to actually manifest the miraculous. And the miraculous always has an element of forgiveness in it. It always has an element of creativity. But the one thing that you said, it also has an element of committing to a brighter future together as well. So where do you stand on miracles? Do you think one of the things that couples can do is manifest the miraculous? And will that benefit other people? And we haven't even talked about children, if there are children involved in this relationship, if there are extended family involved in these relationships. Miracles, where do you guys stand on that?
Yeah. I think what was truly miraculous about that experience is how, by feeling the darkest emotions, right? Disappointment, betrayal, sadness, loss, all of that, whatever dark emotions you can list out that humans can have, we probably felt one way or another something down there. By feeling those supposedly bad and dark emotions, we learned something. It wasn't just pain. Oh, I felt pain and that was it. It was just painful. No, it wasn't. We felt pain so that we knew what hurt meant. Mm-hmm. And by feeling and having a truly human experience, that was a miracle, because that taught us that I don't want to inflict that upon another human being ever. Mm-hmm. And that gives us such commitment and such, there's suddenly a new truth within our body, within our whole being, that goes, no more. Like I can't allow this in my life. And it shifts your life in a completely different direction once you know that. So I think the miracle is within that big insight where everything changes, and something that you maybe allowed once in the past just can't be there anymore. It doesn't resonate with you. It doesn't work anymore. You see it, you feel it, and you know, I'm not going there. I know what that is. And that was from actually the emotions of going down to those dark emotions that we sometimes try to avoid or don't want to look at. Yes. But that was that.
That's marvelous. Okay, fantastic. What I see happens quite a bit, and maybe you can both advise on this. So people are in a long-term relationships. They've gone down the road. Stuff happens. Good stuff happens. Bad stuff happens. So when one of the partners in the relationships decides or makes a decision that they don't want to continue anymore, is that a break point? Are there ways? I mean, if somebody's really decided this is it, I'm just not committed to this relationship anymore. How do you speak to that when you're working? So if you get two people coming to you and it's mostly being led by one who's saying, we're in this situation, but he or she doesn't want to go forward anymore. How can we get around that?
Well, you can't always get around it. Okay. That's the honest truth. Sometimes you can, and it's not necessarily a breaking point. It can be a point where you pivot and you really look at what's going on that this person feels it can't go on anymore. What's happened? What are they feeling? What have they not communicated? What's really under the surface of it all? So as much as it can be a breaking point, it can be a point of deep transformation and of deep insight and of seeing, okay, we are here and we can move past this because we have hit that point. And if you've hit that point and you've made it through, your marriage is going to be stronger.
Sure.
You're going to be stronger, more powerful. You're going to have a deeper understanding of each other. You're going to have a deeper understanding of yourself. Right?
Yes.
And so it is ultimately, yes, it is a personal choice. If someone doesn't want, they don't want. And there is a lot in it right there that if you do go in it, man, it can really shift things.
And most people give up when two things happen. One is they can't see a brighter future, they can't even imagine one. And it's second when they don't see a solution. So when you provide those two on a platter, things shift quite dramatically.
Thank you. Okay. And I'm assuming that when you're working with couples, which is one of the main reasons we're talking today, is that you do offer this amazing help from not just your own experience, but you've developed a process and understanding. Do you want to just talk a little bit about what you've developed in the process of your exceptional relationship and how?
Right.
And how
Yeah.
that
So we
works?
call it the exceptional relationship formula, and it has 4 steps. And we already actually hit on the first one, which is to pivot. Right. So, and that's usually the most difficult one, is because when do you want to pivot? You want to pivot when you realize it's not working.
Yeah.
So you have to have the honesty to look. You have to have the honesty and the courage to say, where we are is not where I want to be. And that means to let go of the idea of, we love each other so much, but they're just a few things off. Because most of the time, that's not the case, if you're really honest. But because we are like in that place, we don't want to go there because we're afraid we could lose it all.
Yes.
But so that's the very first step, is to realize I want to pivot. We want to go somewhere different. And so the second step is the natural step is, well, where to? We're not happy here. Where do we want to go?
Yeah.
And so the second step is to dream. Have the courage to dream. What is the relationship you want to have? How does that look like? How are you being in the relationship? How is your partner in that relationship? It is about having the courage to dream it up. And then, of course, the next step comes up, because where you are and where you want to go, there's a gap. And so you got to have the trust. Step number 3 is to trust that you can create it, that it is possible. Because without the trust, without the faith, you're not going to go for it. You're going to retreat back. Right? And the fourth step, which is the final one, is to then create. So you have your dream, you have the trust. What does that actually mean, practically speaking, in your everyday life? How does that look like? What are the behaviors that are not aligned with that dream? What are the behaviors that do nurture what you want to have in your relationship? Now, that is where the creation process happens, and it is a molding, and every creation process is messy. That is just the nature of creation, that sometimes things don't feel quite right and you're trying things out and you don't know quite how it's going. It's totally normal, which is why the trust is so important. But this is an iterative process. So you don't just do this once. Yep. You do it again and again, because you start creating and you realize, what I thought we wanted doesn't really feel right to me anymore. So you come back to pivot, to dream, to trust, and to create. And so that is when you look at a relationship as something that is not static, but something that is like an organism. It grows, it evolves, it changes. Then you can see that is a process. It's a process that's happening, and you can shape that process when you tap into your own potential of creation. You were speaking about miracles. You really have the ability to create miracles. And one of the miracles is that you have the ability to create. I mean, that is just mind-blowing. Just that you can sit here, you can listen to this. You have all technology. Someone dreamt that up, and you have the same makeup. You have the same inside of you, that power to create. But when we don't realize it, we are blindsided by some unconscious conditioning, and we're creating a little horror in our life. But it is part of the creative power that we have. And so we have to wake up and realize and take ownership and be like, okay, now I'm going to use this creative power in a beneficial way rather than a destructive way.
I'm going to rename this podcast, and you're going to have to excuse me, the alchemy of magical relationships, because that passion that you just showed there, Jachym, I sense it, I know it, and that is right at the heart of what I teach when I'm talking about alchemy transformation, that ability to create, to turn what feels like something that is worthless and isn't going anywhere, and we're stuck in it and we can't do anything with it, how when we face and go into that, it becomes our greatest gold, our treasure, and so on. We are so on the same page. That is amazing. So we're in the Alchemy Lab. Let's not forget this, everybody. And I've got my alchemy wand here, and I've got some concoction going on over here, on which I'm just shaking up. So in this glass, I'm hoping to create a potion called a happy relationship. So you've said a lot already. You've already talked quite a bit about the ingredients that need to go in there. Let's just think about a few more then. If you had to think of a couple more ingredients that are going to bring us that ability to create a happy relationship. What else are we missing, do you think?
Yeah. Another one that's missing is the desire to love and be loved. I think a lot of the times people go into relationships and, like Jachym said, they don't actually see their partner as a human being who's ever changing, ever growing, who's alive, who has their own world and worldviews and everything. They think it's almost like circumstances that they can shift around and change and maybe manipulate, right? And influence. But that environmental change or that, some circumstantial change can then give them what they want, to feel full inside, to feel enough inside. But that's not loving, and that's not receiving. So I think to have a really healthy and happy relationship, the first one is to actually acknowledge what loving means and what being loved means. It's not transactional. A lot of people say, oh, I scratch your back, you scratch my back.
Yes.
Or, oh, I mopped the floor yesterday, you do the dishes today, or whatever it might be. It's not. We're not here to be transactionally giving to one another. We're here to truly receive. And we're here to truly share and to give from the bottom of our hearts. And in that place, synergy can come. And from that place, you can actually love how you're meant to on this planet, I believe, because we're all here to be loved and to love one another. But few people actually go beyond that power struggle of just trying to manipulate each other and the circumstances and seeing your partner as just some thing that you can change. It's not like that. We're here to give and to receive.
I want to add on to that because there's a lot in it, because you can think, well, I'm in a relationship. Obviously, I want to be loved and I want to love someone. That looks really obvious, but you got to be aware of all the guards that we sometimes have around our heart.
Sure.
And so when we're saying, the desire to love and to be loved, that means removing those. And that means to open yourself up to your partner and really be naked in front of your partner. Not physically, but emotionally. And that can be really, really scary because you have not allowed yourself even to go there sometimes, and so that simple statement, the desire to love and be loved, actually is an incredible depth and takes incredible honesty, because some people are I want to love and all that, but when you really look at it, they're afraid, they're scared they're going to get hurt.
Sure.
And so that means to go beyond that. So that is another ingredient. And another one, Nancy, you want to comment on this one?
Yes, go for it.
Okay, so the other one that we want to share is commitment. Commitment, it has come up over and over again in this conversation, but it is so crucial. And commitment, people sometimes think it's like where you hype yourself up and like, yeah, I'm so committed and whatever. That's not commitment. Commitment is to show up every day. Like you go book an airplane ticket. You're going to show up at the airplane ticket. I'm not going to be at home and be like, yeah, I'm going to go and catch the airplane. I'm going to make it. I'm going to take the taxi and I'm going to really go there. You're not going to do this. You're just going to book the taxi or whatever, and you go to the airport and that's it, because you made a commitment. A commitment is not rah-rah. A commitment has a focus and has a power. And that is so important. It's not a one thing. Like, you don't say at the altar whatever you want to say and that's it, or in your relationship when you first meet. It is then living that in your relationship and seeing where you fall short of it and seeing when you fall off it. Just because you committed yesterday doesn't mean you're going to commit today. You see? So that is, for me, that is really one of the most vital ones. And
all right, I've just put all that in there. I'm stirring it up. Here we go. Cheers, everybody. I'm definitely up for commitment, and I'm definitely up to be loved, to love and to be loved. So yeah, cheers to that. one of my wife's favorite TV shows right now, and you may have heard of this, I'm sure you have at some point, is called Married at First Sight. We used to live in Australia, and a lot of people know we used to live in Australia, and the Australian version of Married at First Sight just topped the charts. More people were watching that series than watching football, which for Australia is pretty amazing. And one of the things that's really interesting about this is that they make this initial 8-week commitment to live in this bubble together, and it's very intense. And they work with experts and they talk and share, and it's been quite illuminating. As the experts say, it's almost a microcosm in 8 weeks that they're touching on things that many couples don't even touch on in 8 years or 18
Right.
years or however many years it is. And the things that you've been highlighting have been so spot on. If anybody's watched that series, they will say, yeah, absolutely. That commitment to love and be loved. Without that, then there really isn't a relationship. It's a casual acquaintance that just went on for a long time. Almost, it's not a relationship as such. But yeah, if you haven't seen that, I highly recommend you maybe catch up on. It goes on a bit, I have to say. It drags on for weeks and weeks and weeks, and it gets quite dramatic. But it's good viewer ratings. But I think there is a lot of things that people are mirroring. They're seeing themselves in those relationships as they play out. We're almost out of time. We could go on. I'm sure the audience would love us to just keep talking. And well, so if they want more, they need to come to your website. So let's just remind everybody, yourexceptionalrelationship.com. Just Google. If they were going to Google something, just Google exceptional relationship. Would that get them to you? Probably. Yeah. Okay. That's perfect. Is there something you'd like to share with us from the text of what you use, or some of the program that you've developed that you'd like to share with us before we leave the lab today?
Right. The number one thing I really want people to realize is that you can create a relationship that is better than the honeymoon. It is possible. It is not talked about. It is not mentioned in the movies because the movies are glorifying the honeymoon. And then you hit struggle and you think something is wrong. It isn't. It's just a start. And when you get through it, when you make it through it, wherever you are right now, there is hope. There really is hope. You really can do it. And when you make it through it, the richness, the depth, the fulfillment that you can find on the other end, you're not going to go back and think about the honeymoon. Because some people who come to see us, they're like, I wish we could go back. But you don't want to go back because in the backness is part of the problem. You want to move forward. And when you move forward, what you can find is so much deeper and has nothing to do with just some short-lived pleasure. It is an incredible journey that you can share together, and that can just enrich each other's lives, in ways where you can't imagine, because you're not the other person. Like, I would not be the same man without Natasha.
That's beautiful. On behalf of everybody, Natasha and Jachym, I want to thank you for devoting your lives to this work, to helping other people. If only more couples were as committed as you to not just working it out for yourselves, but reaching out and offering, what you've learned to others. That's just truly wonderful. Thank you on everyone's behalf for doing that, and every blessing to you in your work and what you're trying to achieve here. So I'm going to go away and finish drinking my potion, which is full of commitment and full of the desire to love and to be loved, which is wonderful. But thank you so much again on behalf of everyone for taking the time out, and thank you everyone for listening. Hope this has been really productive for you as well. And just to remind you, if you would like to know more about what Natasha and Jachym have to offer, then you just go to their website, yourexceptionalrelationship.com. Blessings, everyone. Thanks for listening.
Thank you so
Thank
much.
you.